Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Check out my merch store. As usual, if you are interested in personality themed t-shirts or hoodies. So today I'm making a video on a subject that I myself is personally very interested in, and it is about films. So as an INFJ and also with Enneagram 5w4, and sometimes I also test as 4w5. I definitely enjoy all kinds of films, especially the ones that, are able to kind of stay on my mind and last through the years. And today I have picked some of my favorite films to talk about, those that really relate to my personality, either in a direct way, in a sense that the character herself is an INFJ, or at least what I see as an INFJ, or the plot somehow resonates with my personality and my own beliefs and values and experiences as an INFJ 5w4. So if you're not very familiar with Enneagram, just a very brief kind of explanation. Enneagram 5 is also known as the thinker or the investigator, and people with this Enneagram usually are very interested in the pursuit of knowledge, in the pursuit of philosophy, schools of thought, and so on. And people with Enneagram 4 are also known as the romantic or the individualist, and these are the artists, the poets, the writers, basically people who are really, really interested in kind of the literary world and also establishing an individual identity. So for more information on Enneagram, you can definitely check out my video on the Enneagram. The first film that I picked is also known as Amelie. I'm not very sure if this is the correct French pronunciation, but from what I heard from the original film, it sounds like something similar. So Amelie is a really special film to me. I actually watched it when I was on a plane. I think I was traveling in between the United States and Singapore, and I just happened to see this film for free. It is a 2001 French film, and the effects of the film is really long lasting for me. It just makes me really happy and also really touched. It is a pretty, I would say, simple film at first, but I find that it is very rich and very imaginative. And the character, the female protagonist, especially relates to me as an INFJ because she just lives in kind of her own world, and she's also very concerned with helping others. So I'm just going to give you a very, very brief synopsis without giving anything away, hopefully. So one day, this female protagonist, she basically found this metal box hidden somewhere in her apartment, and she wanted to find the owner of the box. And this box is actually of great significance to this now old man. It is kind of the childhood memories of that man. So after she helped the guy find his childhood belongings that was hugely significant to him, she decided to kind of look out for more people's problems and to kind of help them fix their life, which sounds like a pretty INFJ thing. INFJs like to kind of play the counselor role in other people's lives, and she started to kind of take notice of people in her daily life. She works in a restaurant as a waitress, and she started noticing people in her own restaurant who are really unhappy, chronically unsatisfied with their lives, and she decided to kind of plan little ways to help them find their happiness. And of course, she herself also faced her own problem when she had her first real crush. She met him in a train station, and that was a scene that I really, really could identify with. Just like this feeling of first crush, she just met him, and it was kind of like a feelings at first sight situation. I mean, I do use a lot of my gut feeling, especially at the start, so I do believe in kind of the attraction at first sight situation that she was experiencing. And it was a really intense moment in the film when she caught sight of this guy in the train station, and it was portrayed so beautifully in a very surrealistic way. Anyway, so you should definitely watch this film if you're interested. Throughout the film, it has a very magical realism feeling. to it, and the soundtrack is also amazing. Highly recommended for anyone who is like looking for kind of a cheerful film, and also a film that is full of touching little moments and highly imaginative. And the second film that I picked for today's video is called Before Sunrise. This film, I think it came out in 1995, if I'm not wrong, just somewhere in the 1990s. And obviously back then I was just born, and it was just amazing. Like the film itself, I felt very represented once again in that film because I could totally relate to the female character. So basically the plot follows that the female character called Selene is from France, and she met an American called Jesse. So they met on a train somewhere in Europe. One of them was reading, and the other just came to talk about the book, and also just to, cure boredom, to talk about life and stuff like that. So when they began talking, they realized that they have a lot of connections with each other, and they decided, just on a whim, I guess, to step off the train and go to Vienna, explore the city in one day, and they are supposed to part before sunrise. So I think that was kind of the idea of Before Sunrise, where they have the time together, a very short period of time, and it is a romance film. And usually I'm not very big on the whole romance genre because I find it to be really cheesy. I find it to be kind of the typical like cliche plot, and usually I find it's really difficult to find female protagonists that I can somehow relate with, because a lot of the female protagonists in like this really cheesy romance films tend to be kind of stereotyped, and also like very watered down, like not very multidimensional. And I don't really see a lot of intuitive representation in those like cheesy romance films. As a kid, I think I mentioned in one of my videos as well, like growing up, I found it really difficult for myself to imagine myself in a romantic situation because I did not feel represented as kind of the female lead in movies, especially in a romance film. But this film just really does it for me. I'm pretty sure that Selene is an INFJ, and she just has this really sensitive side to her. She also has a lot of her own personal philosophies, which I enjoyed watching throughout. So basically throughout the film, she and her partner, they're not really like boyfriend girlfriend yet, but basically they exchange a lot of their own ideas about life, their views on relationships, like their views on the world. And it was just this very natural, this really like you are seeing the real life unfold in front of you. It doesn't feel like a film. It feels more like two people really getting to know each other, and also us getting to know the two of them through their own, how they view certain things, their own perspectives, and they're very honest with each other. And I just really enjoyed like the philosophical nature of this film in a very casual way, in like a casual conversational setting. It doesn't feel very forced. It doesn't feel pretentious. It just feels really real. And I personally like films that feels real. Yes, I also like the whole, magical realism kind of film, but I think that I either like the ones that are really imaginative and really go all out, or I like the really down-to-earth, really real-to-life kind of films. I'm not really into the kind of blockbuster films that has a lot of action going on. I can enjoy it, but I wouldn't say it's my favorite kind of film. Whereas for Before Sunrise, I really could see myself. Like, it sounds strange, but nationality aside and, race aside, I feel like I could really see myself as the female protagonist. Just even the way that she talks, even like the things that she talk about, is just really similar to me, and that is rare for me to see that on screen. So once again, I would highly recommend this film, and also for people who just love the romantic genre, definitely check it out. It's one of the least cheesy, most realistic romance film that I have seen. Another film on the list, so this is an Asian film, and this film would probably be coming as a surprise to some people who have seen the film or heard about it. This film is rated R, And this film in particular has a lot of explicit scenes. My point is not to sell the explicit scenes here. My point is really to talk about the value of the film and why I value it so much. Okay, the name of the film is called Last Caution. So obviously when you hear the title, you can already kind of deduce to yourself like, yep, there's gonna be some explicit scenes there, but you wouldn't know how much. Honestly, it's a lot. Like the first time I saw it, I was really, really surprised by just the amount of explicit scenes there are. And I think it is the only film on the list that has so many just very, very, very like in your face kind of sexual scenes. However, those scenes are actually meaningful. Like they're not like there just to entertain. They're not like, you know, like those blockbuster films where it's there to attract the views. I mean, sure, it can attract the views to some degree, I guess, but the film itself really requires those scenes to kind of showcase the characters' own emotions towards each other. This is the only film I have seen in like all of Asian cinema that I can confirm about 100% that the female protagonist is an INFJ. And the reason why I could really, really relate to this film is because of the emotions of the character. And just how she portrayed the character, it made me feel really represented in the area of Asian cinema, because I have never seen like an Asian INFJ represented in film. And this film is actually by this Taiwanese director whom you might have heard before because he also directed Life of Pi. He also directed, I think, Brokeback Mountain. His name is Amelie. And this film is actually set in the war times. So I recommend for Western viewers to kind of do a little bit of research on the timeline of where this film is about, because it can give you a lot more context on like what this film is really touching on, and it can really bring you a lot more emotions once you get to the context. So it's basically during the Japanese occupation years where the female protagonist is supposed to be working for this underground student union, but basically they are working alongside some other spies. Like this is an espionage mission where they have to get the female protagonist, who is, you know, the most attractive in the group, to approach this man who is working for the Japanese, this Chinese guy who is, you know, kind of in cahoots with the Japanese, to really in the end get him captured at his weakest moment. Because, you know, as usual with this like political situations, it's better to have a little bit of a seduction process in order to get him in prison, basically. So the whole movie is about this female protagonist and her own self kind of being in conflict with a cause, which is the political cause. So she's Chinese. Obviously, she wants the man to be captured and she wants to help her country in some way. However, her own self is also torn in the process, because as she started to immerse in this espionage mission, she also has her own identity in question. She also started to develop a form of connection with the man that she was trying to bring down. I mean, I know it sounds cliche, but honestly, the movie itself is not cliche at all. There's a lot of intensity to the way that they are connecting with each other, and also a lot of moral dilemma where she is really debating whether she's supposed to kill to kind of save her country, or at least help her country in some way, or to really help the man because she finds this like interpersonal connection very valuable to her. And I think this is something that I can relate to. Obviously, I don't live in those times and I don't have this issue of like having to choose either the person I'm in love with or my country. But for me, I think, to me, the personal and the political is very much intertwined. I think that oftentimes we can really neglect that when we are pursuing a political cause. We kind of forget about the humanity behind it. Like, just people in general, even people who are maybe on the other side, they also have a lot of humanity in them. So again, this is a highly I would say underrated movie. It is pretty well known in Asia, mainly because of the explicit scenes, but I really hope you can watch it just for, generally the value that it really can bring, and also the cinematography is amazing. As typical of the director Amelie, I think you would love it. Okay, 2 more films to go. So another film that I really want to touch on is the film Lady Bird. I know a lot of you probably heard of the film already because Lady Bird is, I would say, quite a well-known recent film. I know a lot of people have already done reviews on Lady Bird and it has gotten a lot of praises. And personally, the reason why this film resonated so much with me is because it reminded me of my own teenagehood. The female protagonist, I don't think she's an INFJ. However, I do think that she is an intuitive, probably an NT type. Anyway, this is not the main point of why I like the film. I just really like the film because of the character's conflicts with her mother throughout the film. So I think the mom is kind of an STJ type. And that really resonated with me because it is very similar to kind of my situation where, I'm also an intuitive and my mom is also an STJ, and you can really see through the film basically her conflicts, as well as kind of areas where you would say that the character is also flawed because she herself has also a lot of growing up to do. She has a lot of immaturity, and you can just see the coming of age dilemma where there's this individualism versus family, and how do you reconcile that? And is it possible to reconcile your own identity with caring for your family and how they think and what kind of difficulties they are going through? Because oftentimes as teenagers, you often only think about yourself, and it's really hard for teenagers to kind of focus the lens on others because they are going through a tough time. But this film really shows the difficulties on both sides. It shows you, it illuminates you the struggles that can show up for both sides of the equation. Her parents, herself, her friend group, her navigating through high school and her kind of finding the right college for herself. The whole film is very, very realistic. I would say that it is highly relatable for me and kind of my role in my family, my role in high school and so on. Just a highly relatable film overall, and very touching moments of the daughter and mother relationship. So the last film that I would be talking about for today is The Dead Poets Society. I know this is another one of those films that is probably widely known, and I just cannot leave it out of the list because it is so meaningful to me. When I first saw it, I think it is a 1980s film, late 1980s, and it is about John Keating. He is an English professor, and he basically tries to teach his students in a very innovative way. He tries to get them to think about concepts in very counterintuitive ways. He tries to get them to really learn poetry, not just the idea of poems being the sentimental kind of cliche stuff, but he really wants them to get their emotions out, their raw emotions, and to set them on paper. And another thing that I really enjoyed about this movie is about how it teaches people to think for themselves. And this is something that I feel a lot of education systems do not really get people to do. People are really treated like sheep in many kind of schools. It doesn't really matter where in the world. I feel a lot of teachers spoon feed the students, and a lot of teachers are trying to almost brainwash students into thinking their way, or it's my way or the highway, or they are kind of trying to get the students to get good grades, which I understand where they're coming from. But again, I feel Dead Poets Society really shows me the value of true education, where you are teaching people the methods, but you're not necessarily feeding them information, if that makes sense. It's about getting people to think for themselves. And there was this one iconic scene. Basically, he was telling them, You can walk from the starting line to the finishing line, and you can walk whichever way you want. And so all the students began to walk their own walk. It's like, preserve your individuality, like have your own style. And this one student just doesn't walk. And he asked the student, why are you not walking? And he says, I'm exercising the right not to walk. And I know this sounds like a teenage thing, it's like, oh, I'm a rebel, whatever. But I think it really goes to show this idea of thinking outside the box, that you challenge any idea, whether it is from anybody, from your friends, from like TV, from like your teachers, from whoever. You are able to, do your own thing. And by extending the metaphor, really think for yourself, think outside the box, not necessarily following the rules of what people have set out, and only maybe following the rules that make sense to you. Obviously, it is maybe not a very practical idea for a lot of these professors out there to do this kind of teaching. It's a very special style that actually got the professor fired. But not giving too much away, I definitely think that you should see this movie, and maybe it can make you rethink a lot about your own education and about how education should be. So that is all for today about the films that really speak to me as an INFJ 5w4. I would say Dead Poets Society really speaks to me as an Enneagram 5, because I really do like to do a lot of critical thinking and the pursuit of my own knowledge without getting people to brainwash me into their own modes of thinking. And I would hopefully see you on Patreon as well, where I disclose my top 5 books that really resonate with my personality. So once again, remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I will see you soon. Bye.